you can. So obviously doing the physical stuff, it can get hard mentally, especially if you have to do the same running sessions, if you have to do the same sessions over and over again. That's why it's important to mix them up. And when you do the ghosting sessions, it's important to have few options in doing ghosting sessions. But at the same time, I do think that it's the most important part of training is actually doing the things over and over again, because it's important that it gets boring, and it's important that it gets brutal mentally, and it's important that you go through it, because when you go to compete, you're gonna play. I will play mostly the same players over and over again. We're gonna go down the backhand side for 45 minutes during the match. We know that, and so in the match you're gonna have to do the things over and over again. And if you're not gonna keep up with that mentally in training, then when it comes in the match, you won't be able to keep up mentally in the match. So it's important that I do a lot of sessions with when it's always the same and it gets boring and gets tough mentally. But I know that even in the days that I don't want to do them, they are the most important days to actually get up and go and do them, because they're the ones that get me over the line if it's 2-all and 10-all.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great bit of advice for the kids, especially when they're young. They only want to do the things that they enjoy, but sometimes you have to do the things that you don't enjoy. They're probably the ones that are going to improve you the most as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so Harry is with us, but he doesn't want to. He's a bit shy, so he asked his question. He said, "How did you get into squash?"
I used to be a swimmer when I was young. I swam from when I was 5 till I was 10 years old. I swam for 5 years back in Alexandria in Egypt, and my uncle played for fun. And when I was 8 years old, he took me to the squash court one day back in my hometown in Alexandria. And I saw people chasing a small black ball. And for the next 20 years or 22 now years of my life, I find myself chasing that ball, and I'm trying to chase it till today. But that's how I actually got into the sport. I got into there, and I really, it fascinated me. You know, I found so much intensity. I found two guys going hard at each other, battling it out on court, and I felt like I want to be in this. I want to be in that battle. It just fascinated me from the first day I went there, and yeah, and I feel lucky that I am doing the thing I love the most for all that long.
Did you pick it up really quickly?
Well, I used to play 3 times a week at the beginning because my mom wanted me to stay swimming, and I didn't really enjoy the swimming. Although I do think that swimming actually helped my squash career. That I swam for 5 years. I do think swimming gives a lot of basics into the body, I think. And then I won the nationals under 11. That's when my mom realized, okay, maybe I can be good at this sport. And that's from there. That's from that moment. Actually, my mom and my dad made sure that they invested so much in me that if my dad had £5 in his bank and he knew that if he need to spend all those £5 in that next session, I'll only improve for 1%, he would have spent that £5. So his investment was never in properties. His investments were never in business. His investments were always in his kids, and that's what made me and my brother who we are at the end, I think.
That's great stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's parents on here as well listening, and I'm sure you, as much as it might be tough sometimes financially, if you know that your kids are giving 100% and they're trying their hardest to get better all the time, I'm sure you're happy to part with your money if you know that it's going to a good place. Okay, Renata, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi. What motivated you as a junior? Like, who was your role model?
So my first coach when I was young was his name is Gamal Awad. He had a big rivalry in the days long back with Jahangir. From when I was a kid, from when I was 11 years old, he used to always talk to me about these matches and these generations. So I dreamt from when I was young that I wanted to be like them. But he always used to remind me every day that the role model for you is yourself. It's not me, it's not Jahangir, it's not any of this greatest guy. Because if you want to become like them one day, you need to be yourself. you can hope to achieve what they achieved, but you need to do the way with your own character and your own personality. So he always used to tell me, look in yourself in few years. That's your role model. And then when you get there in few years, look at yourself in a few more years. That's also your role model in few years. So you keep getting better and better and better and better. So you find yourself, you still have another role model in few years. And then when you get to that goal, you put for yourself another goal, and goes on and on and on and on.
Okay. Right. Okay. Jude File, were you there? You got a question?
Well, you've already kind of answered this, but does having a world ranking of number one put extra pressure on you? And if so, how do you cope with it?
I didn't hear very well, sorry.
He said, does having a ranking of being number one put more pressure on you? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I never think of it as pressure, because I always felt like pressure has followed me really most of my life. So I was, when I got there, I didn't feel the pressure, because of course the pressure is in moments of playing world champ for 1 week. That's for me the pressure, because you need to get it right and get it perfect for 1 week. And that is brutal to know that you can train the whole year, but if you don't get it right for 1 week, you can get it right for 6 days of the week, but just for that one day can ruin the whole week. So that's for me the real pressure in the sport. For me, the number one pressure is, for me, I've always had days where players could get the best out of me, but I've always taken it, you can get me for days, but let's see who's going to get the other person during the season. And if you're going to get me for 1 season, let's see who's going to get me 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 4 seasons. Because for me, it wasn't about few matches. For me, it was about the whole really war, to be honest. About we're going to compete against each other. We're going to get the best out of each other. And let's see who is going to take each other at the end, you know. And so I always felt that this pressure for me was less than actually having to deal with pressure of trying to win a big title. And then for me, the pressure, if you're going to go through a pressure trying to win a big title, that's when you need to, before matches, you need to prepare really well before matches. You need to visualize before matches, because no matter how hard you train before matches, sometimes things can happen during the match, can put you off. You can get a bad decision. You can your opponent can give you a bad block during the match that can put you off. You know, a player talk to you. These are all kind of situations, and when you're on court, you need to. There is no excuse. You cannot go, of course, saying that, oh, I lost because my opponent was bad, because at the end of the day, someone lost and someone won. That's what counts, unfortunately, in sports, you know. So to deal with these things, you need to visualize a lot before the match. So you need to see the match before it even happens. So when the situation happens in the match, you're already prepared for the situation, so nothing can put you off. And that's for me, dealing with the pressure, is to try and see the situation before it even happens on court.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously, in terms of pressure over the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years maybe, like for most people, I'm talking about another couple of guys that have been to that place, number one in the world, maybe haven't dealt with it quite as well. But you seem to thrive on pressure. It seems to be something that actually pushes you on. I remember with Greg, when he first got to world number one, he didn't know how to deal with it, and he really struggled mentally to deal with it. But for you, it was just another day at the office. But that's what it seemed like anyway. Okay, right, Ollie, have you got a question?
Can you train too much? Do you think it's possible to train too much?
Yeah, of course, it is possible to train too much, but it's important to train smart. Back in the older generation, the mentality was always the more the better, but now, like, even my coaches, I had Jonah. When I arrived to Jonah, he told me, I've done that, but now after my squash career, I've had to remove my hips. I had to do all these things. And when I went to Rodney Martin, he told me the exact same thing. So they wanted me to train hard, but because they went through that. They understand how to make me train smart at the same time, and obviously with the help of Hadrian as well in Bristol. So yeah, so it's important to train hard, but it's important to understand that squash is a very physical sport. It's quite easy to get injured in the sport, so it's very important you do your work for rehab and to protect your body when you have a twist of ankle or a slip on court. You need to do all those physical stuff to protect yourself from injuries, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely a good bit of advice. I mean, obviously I'm a bit older than Mo, but I've seen those guys, what they look like after their careers, and it's as he will tell you, it's not a pretty sight. Some of the guys that probably played in the 70s trained way too hard. It worked at the time, but longevity probably was not perfect. Whereas I think nowadays Mo hopefully will go on till well into his late 30s and still be at the top of the game, just because he's going to train a bit smarter.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. Okay. Right, okay. Millie, have you got a question?
Who do you think is the most up-and-coming player for male and female?
Millie, that was very, very quiet. I'm not sure if your volume is down a bit low. Do you want to try again, Millie?
Who do you think is the most up-and-coming player for male and female?
I think it was what. Is there any up-and-coming players, male and female, that you've seen?
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, Asal, for example, has done great results recently. I think even before these results, we kind of saw what he was going to do, really, because he won the World Juniors. He had so much confidence, and we all knew what he was going to do. And I think he's bringing something different to the sport, and the way he plays, the pace he plays, and yeah, I think he's going to, I think, make us actually hopefully play for longer. You know, he will motivate us to try and play for my generation for longer as well, just like how I did to the generation of Nick and Greg when I was young like him. And for the moment, I think there is obviously Hanya. What she has been doing obviously has been amazing. She has impressed me a lot. Not just the way she's been winning, but obviously how she has been backing it up at her age is obviously amazing. But obviously there is a lot of youngster at her age as well who Gohar obviously still 21, 22. She's still very, very young, and she has already achieved so much. And Nourish is only 25. So I think there is a lot of great youngsters who are going to be really great for the sport coming up, definitely, who are already achieved a lot and that will hopefully achieve way more than this.
Okay, Tig, you got a question for us? Tig, you there? Okay, we'll come back to that one. Okay, Sky, I think you've got a few questions. I don't know if you've got one to start with.
Yeah, my first question is, do you change your game plan depending on who you play?
100%. I mean, I am that kind of player, and I'm that kind of player. There are a lot of players that always stick to their game. But and I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's just that that's the way they play. But that's not the kind of school I come from. I always come from the school that adapt to different game style. I'm going to play my opponent depending on who he is, what conditions I'm playing him at, whether I'm playing him outdoor, indoor, whether the AC is too high, whether it's too hot, whether it's too humid. There are so many things. I'll give you an example. When we play in Laguna, for example, we play outdoor. So every day the temperature is different. So every day, whenever I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I go outside to check the temperature. And when I see the temperature, and then know who the player I'm playing against. And then depending on the temperature and the player, I find out what tactic I'm playing. While if I'm playing in Qatar Classic, it's indoor and we know the AC and we know how high it is, then I know my tactics from the night before, because nothing will change the day after. So you have to adapt, literally. And if you want to stay at the top, you need to adapt to different conditions depending On a lot of factors.
Well, that's a good insight. I never really thought of the change of like on the outdoor courts and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm guessing when you play it in El Guna and places like that, do you get the wind as well?
Yeah, Laguna, there are days where it's windy, and I remember once I played Rosner in the quarter. The match before me was Miguel and Mossad, and I was watching on TV, and every time Mossad hit a volley, he hit the bottom of the floor, literally, and I didn't understand what was happening. I went on the court on the warm up. Every time I hit the ball to myself to volley it, because the wind was so much, it was making the ball move, so you couldn't control the volley. So I understood what was happening with Mossad. So in a second, I had to change my tactic, and I decided to let Rosner volley everything in the match. And Rosner literally volleyed everything in the bottom of the 10. So I won by letting my opponent, by giving him a tactic that I would never use normally, because there is no way you would want your opponent to volley against you. So I had to change my tactic during the warm-up of a match.
Yeah. Okay. Harvey, I think Harvey's got a question.
So my question is, what is the squash setup like in Bristol?
Yeah, we have a really good setup. University of the West of England here has really started the base in Bristol. I would say they started giving me a scholarship after I finished in Millfield School when I was young. Hadrian was the one behind it, and then from that moment, literally the year after, Lucas Erm came, and then my brother arrived the year after, and then Josh Master arrived, and there were a lot others as well, and then slowly we had other players. Now Yao arrived here, who was top 20, and so Josh and I came here, Joel is here, and so we even have a lot of professionals that even wanted to come here, not just for university, that just wanted to come to train now. And so it's a really nice vibe. It's a good group of guys. We all love hanging out with each other as well, and we all train together almost at the same time. And yeah, it's nice to train around professional atmosphere always, and yeah, we really enjoy being here, definitely. You should come one day.
I think that's why Harvey was asking, because he's probably looking at university for next year, I would have thought. So if you can put in a good word for him. Yeah, we spoke to Josh. We did one of these with Josh on Thursday, and he spoke about when the first year he went to Bristol. He was very lucky because apart from you, obviously, he was nearly the best player after you. So he was lucky that you wanted to train with him quite a lot. So he said that helped his game massively. Obviously, would do.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Josh. We lived together for so many years as well. Yeah, it was sad when he left. They're like a little brother to me, definitely.
Yeah, well, it definitely benefited his game in those couple of years that he was getting to hit with you on a regular basis.
I was definitely hard on him in training.
Good. Okay, right, Max, the other Max this time, Max Liftman.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering how you keep a competitive mindset during times like these.
It's very hard to do that. It's not easy. I'm also a human being who can go through hard times, and I couldn't play the events in Egypt, for example, the last period, and just due to just politics. That's all I can say. And it was hard for me to be in England fit, knowing that I can be on court beating a lot of these guys. Maybe not win the tournament, but I know I can at least be in the semis, final maybe. It was hard for me mentally, and you have to know, if you're going through tough time mentally, to train right now, keep yourself motivated. Not just you, even the top guys go through these moments, but what makes them strong is that they find ways to look at the positive, even if you have 9 problems and only one good positive thing. We find ways to hold on to that only positive thing, and keep it to motivate us. So for example, what motivates me is always being the best, winning titles. So So I found it hard that I didn't have that goal because I couldn't compete. So that goal was not there. So I went to training one day, and I had a little bit of tears in my eyes. I felt a bit weak, and it's okay when you feel weak. You know, when you actually say that you felt weak, that's actually more of a sign of strength, that you actually can admit it. And I told Steffi, you know, I thought I can be strong. I can handle what happened, that I can play in Egypt, but it broke. I feel like broken at the moment. And then Steffi suggested something really clever. He told me, I think what is breaking you is your goal was always to win. You can't play title at the moment, so change your goals. So we set our goals was to improve every day as a squash player. So every day I focus for a week. By the end of the week, I'm gonna improve the backhand drop. But so that has been my goal. The next week I'm gonna improve my backhand drop. And then the moment I'm gonna hear the date I can compete, my whole body language is going to change into war mode, you know, like competing, like a boxing, you know, like you're waiting for a date, you know. So right now, if you're lacking events, if you're lacking that kind of motivation, find something else to motivate you. Find something that you're gonna enjoy doing, that will motivate you every day. And then when you come back, and we will come back to the thing that you like and you love the most, that motivate you the most, you'll be ready for it, you know.
Yeah, it's great advice. Great advice. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you guys, Mo, like the pros, have had a few tournaments here and there. I mean, but these kids on here haven't played literally a single competitive match for nearly a year. So it's tough. It's tough. But like, it's good advice just to, even if it's not squash related, maybe it's just physical, or just set yourself a target, and then each week set a new one. Keep yourself interested.
What's your goal? What do you want to do? Like, what's your goal in the sport? What would you like to be one day?
Is that to Max who asked the question?
Yeah.
Max?
I mean, I don't really know. I just enjoy it as a sport, I guess. So, like, playing it as much as I can, and to carry on playing it like into like older years when people usually give up. I think that is like what I want to do, because it is like one of the things I enjoy the most.
So
like,
you would like to play professional one day?
I mean, yeah, that would be a dream, but I mean, I don't know. I need to train harder, I think, to get to that point. And yeah, at the moment, I mean, I'm going into uni hopefully in the next couple years, so maybe at that point I'll be able to do a bit more. But you know,
good luck.
we'll see. Thank you.
Okay, right. We've got a double act of Leah and Emma. I'm not sure which one's going to ask the question, but are you there?
Yeah, actually, it's Leah and Emma's dad. It's okay.
Okay.
So in squash, my girls are 12 and 14, doing very nicely, and they're often taught that. So the question is, technique is everything. Could have Mo's view, proportionally in terms of what constitutes your contribution on court. How much is technique and how much is everything else?
I would say mentally is everything. To be honest, I wouldn't say that Ali Farag has the best technique in the sport. I wouldn't say that I have the best technique in the sport. So I wouldn't say the technique is important. Of course, it's important to have a good technique, but during a match when I'm playing with, it's important to have the basics. But during the match, Ali and myself, there are moments where we have to adapt our technique and play with a million different techniques during the match, so you're not predictable as well at the same time. So I'm not into having the same technique. My school comes, or like a lot of Egyptians, comes from random really, and we have a lot of different techniques. Like you watch Rami, it's like a technique that you will never see in your life, but it works for him. And I wouldn't say Ali is a very basic technique. I wouldn't say that I am a very basic technique. So I think maybe Shabana definitely was. Gawad, that's why they're really nice to watch, because they make it really smooth, definitely. But I think technique is very, very important, but and to put the base is very important, but I would say definitely the mental side is the most important side in sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been talking about with some of the pros that I've been working with the last couple of weeks. A lot of these guys are around like top 50, and everyone's quick, everyone's fit, everyone can hit a nice ball. So what's the difference? Why can't they get up to where you are, Mo? And it's that mental strength, 100%, and that's obviously been. I think that's been your biggest strength for me over the years. It's just when I'm watching you on Squash TV, and it gets to 10-all in the fifth, and I'm like, well, Mo's going to win. You know he's going to win. Like doesn't matter who you're playing. I would always back you to win when it gets to those situations.
Hope I didn't make you lose much money though.
No, I'm not betting yet. Okay, right, Veer, have you got a question?
Hello. I just wanted to ask, how important is diet in squash, and like, what does your diet consist of normally?
It's very, very important. I think that's one of the things our generation is very lucky to have, is access to sport science, to nutrition. I think that's the thing that the older generation really didn't have access to, and I think that's one of the reasons why we can say.
Sorry, Mo, one second, Mo. Sorry, Veer, can you just turn yourself back onto mute? I think it's just gone a bit funny. Try again, Mo. Sorry.
So I think that's one of the things. Nutrition is one of the things as well that actually helped athletes in our current generation plays for longer, definitely. And if you see players like Nick or Greg, the way they play till like 37, they're still in the top 5. That's because they had all these things off the court in check, and that's something I learned from them. They always had the nutrition always in check. They always had the physiotherapist in check. They had all these things off the court in check. They always went to every tournament with an army with them of all these people that took care of everything for them off the court. And I have learned a lot from them over the years on how to do that like them. And that's what we like. So it is definitely important to have a good diet. It's important to understand your body, what your body accepts in nutrition, what your body doesn't accept. So yeah, it is very important, I think.
When do you think that you actually started taking more notice of your diet? Because I seem to remember when you was first started playing, you probably didn't eat quite so well.
When I was around 20, before from when I was 17 to 19, I mean, I know Ben really want to say that story, but I'll say it. I went to a PSL match once when I was 18 years old. I was in the car with Hadrian and other players. I bought on the way a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, a dozen. I ate 6 of it on the way to the match. I won the match. I came back, I ate the rest of the 6. Please don't do that. I'm telling you, just don't do that. If I kept doing this, there was no way I would have went where I went now. So from when I was 20, I definitely had to really think carefully about my diet, because I needed to lose a bit of weight. I needed to be professional and much more professional, and luckily I did that. Yeah.
You still managed to do pretty well when you was a junior, even with not a great diet. So who knows how much better you would have been. Okay, Casper, your question.
What is your best win and why?
I wouldn't say any of my win. I would say as was my best win, because every time I would say my best win was my next one. So if I would say that my best win, this one was my best win, that would have been my main goal in my career, really. And I've never had a goal that said that I want to win this title. My goal was always to win the whole season if I can, obviously, which obviously it's hard, but if I could, that's always the goal. So whenever I won a big title, the whole focus was always about what is the next, when is the next one. That's the first thing I say. You know, when I played the Canary Wharf final against Ali last year, it was a great win. I won 3-1. I was in the car with Hadrian driving that night. The whole way I was talking about that game I lost. I told him, why did I lose this game? You know, I didn't think about how great I won the 3 games I won. I told him, how can I improve? Why did I lose that game? That's the way you should think always. The next one is the best one. The next one is the best one. And then when you get to win that title, it never felt satisfying enough. So I always realized I want the next one anyways. And that's how the top guys mostly really think.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's going back to what I said when I first met you. Like, even though you won, you still just wanted to learn. You just wanted to learn all the time, and it sounds like you're still exactly the same now.
You probably didn't want to talk to me at that time anyway.
I was pretty disappointed, but obviously I had a pretty good idea that you was going to go on to be a top player, so it sort of softened the blow, because I knew that you was going to go on to be like an amazing player. So I just didn't want to lose to you at that point.
You still got the best. You got the better out of me the year after though.
Yeah, I think we might come to that one.
Yeah.
So we'll go to that one now. Josh Dubert, do you want to ask a question?
Cool. Is there any... Hi, Mohamed.
Hi.
Is there any player you've not beaten before in a PSA event?
Yeah, cool.
As my coach Ben has told me that there is a certain player with a 1-0 record against you.
But he's not quite sure now.
Actually, I think that's yeah. Actually, I think Ben is the only player that in the stats on the PSC I have not had one win over. I think actually, the wins I had were the only one I had was the BSP event. Unfortunately, it doesn't count as PSC, right?
Not for me. Not for me.
Yeah,
no.
it doesn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if we'd have played 10 times in that same season or even in that same week, that would have been the only win. So I'll take it.
Yeah, so actually, I was seeded 2 for that event, and you were seeded 5 to 8. And I remember before I went to that event, I had Jonah. I was in midfield, and Jonah told me, if you lose that match, I'll really be upset with you. Actually, he told me that actually, and I think he was teaching me to play with pressure a little bit. Actually, that's what his lesson. And because I had in my mind thinking, I don't want to upset Jonah, and you're obviously a great and like every time I lobbed your backhand, you killed me on the backhand. And he was teaching me I was seeded to a higher seed, and I had that pressure, of being a bit higher seed, but I was at the same time, you were so experienced because you were 2 love up, and I started to come back at you, I remember. And that's when you were taking a lot of time in between points.
Never.
Me, and it's all good, man. I do these things now, I learned my lesson well, So yeah, it was a big lesson, honestly.
It's good. I'm amazed you still remember it, to be honest, after everything you've achieved. But at least I went on to win that tournament.
I only remember these things, actually. They're the only things I remember, the times I lost,
all the bad results. Okay, let's move it on. Dylan, you've got a question?
Yeah, so why did you choose Bristol University?
I did first of all, because it was close to Millfield, because Millfield was 1 hour away, and I wanted to, my brother was still in Millfield, my mom lived with my brother, so I thought I would be close to them. The factor that I was still with Jonah, it was also something that was a big bonus to still be close to Jonah, because I was very close to him. The decision to Bristol, I didn't know Hadrian that much, to be honest, but I went there, I saw the facilities, I saw what they can offer me, even though that I didn't know Hadrian very well, but I felt that he is excited to start a project here, that he wanted to see Bristol. At that time, squash was mostly in Leeds, in Ponty, and London. I felt like he wanted to create that in England. He wanted to make Bristol like this. And I was excited to be, he wanted me to be the leader of this, to use me as the leader of this. And I was excited to be part of that project, and excited to be close to Jonah. And I'm glad that everything worked out. And now we have all these amazing players that come and train here. And we have even more facility than what we had at when I came here at the beginning, and it's still expanding. And yeah, I feel lucky to be, and now actually I love that city so much that I made it a home to me, that I want to live here after even I finished my career. So it was a life-changing decision, and I'm glad that I took it, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys are interested in like university and stuff like that. Was the States never an option, never really considered for you?
Definitely, it was considered, and because I was a good junior, so I had offers, obviously, to go. Most of the juniors that can win British Junior, they get offers in the States, and but the thing for me that I would choose squash every single day, and think that England gave me the balance to study and play squash. In the States, I would have had to do what Ali has done to study and stay out of the sport and come back is incredible. But out of 10 cases, that can happen 1 out of 10 as well. And you had to be incredibly like it could happen, but it's not the same balance as when you do it in England. And there were a lot of great juniors that went to the States and couldn't really play the same way that they could have if they went straight pro as well. The only one I can remember that really did it is Amanda and Ali, out of all of them really, and they're both incredibly talented. So I had the opportunity, but I just felt like Bristol was gonna give me the opportunity to have a good degree and be able to let me be me and enjoy doing what I felt I was born to do.
Okay. Right, we've got a question. I think it's from Will and Jemima, but I'm not sure. Maybe Richard might be asking the question.
No, I'll ask it.
Okay.
Hi. I was just wondering how it is playing with your brother and if there's much of like a rivalry.
Yeah, it is brutal. It's the worst match for me to play during them. Out of everyone, he's the worst match to play, 100%. In terms of, there is so much emotions involved. You're basically trying to stop your brother from achieving his dream. And when you're the first who want to see your brother achieve that dream, but you are on court the first person from your brother from achieving that dream. And when it comes to a match like the World Cup final, that was brutal. I think I remember the moment he beat Ali in the semis. I screamed of happiness, and then after 5 seconds, I realized I'm actually playing my brother in the final, and I actually stayed in the room quiet for like 2 hours trying to absorb it. You know, that I was the one stopping my brother from achieving his dream. You know, I always tried to avoid seeing my brother the night before the match. During the same day, I tried to avoid seeing him because unfortunately, you have to get mentally into a zone where you have to beat him. And if you're gonna see him the morning of the match, there's so much emotions. So I remember the morning of the World Champ, I was getting food on the way back to the hotel. I saw him in the reception, and that was the first time I see him after his win of the semis, and that's when we hugged actually. And I think that hug because of that hug, it made us not play our best in the match. I think because I think that we both could have played better. It was just, I think what made the match well was it was just dramatic because two brothers playing in the final more than the quality. But I think that our quality dropped because emotions kicked in, and when emotions kick in during work, it's always trouble work. So you have to be always ruthless on court, and when emotions come into place, it can affect that work. And because when you're on court, you have to get into a war zone. Your opponent is trying to beat you, is trying to stop you from winning, and you have to be really relentless on court. And it's really hard to do that against my brother. So that's why there are a lot of moments where matches where my brother should have beaten me and he couldn't get over the top. And there are a lot of moments that in year that I should have beaten him and I lost to him. So there are just a lot of things that happen. It's tough, really tough.
Yeah, I'm guessing you've spoken about it. I'm guessing it affects him exactly the same way.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why we have different teams as well. He had his own squash team. I had my own squash team. When he got to world number 3, that's when we sat down and we said to each other, I think we need to have two different squash teams because we felt that we started to actually compete against each other in big matches, in big moments where I needed people to speak to, he needed people to speak to. I need to speak about tactics before him. So all these things, there is and it's hard to do all this, and you have to face a lot of conversations that you don't want to face sometimes, and it is hard, but I think we both deal with it really, really well together so far.
Yeah, I mean, it must be tough even when you're with a training partner, if you're trained by the same coach, Obviously, I get that sometimes when I coach two people and then they play each other. But to have like a sibling, it's like makes it even harder. Like knowing who to talk to and who what to do about it, whether to just leave them to just get on with it, or to give them both advice.
Yeah.
It's tough. Okay, Millie, we'll go back to you. I think you've got another question. You still there, Millie? No. Okay. May, did we have a question from May? I think she had two anyway.
I just wanted to ask, do you ever find it hard, like knowing so many people are watching you?
Not really. It's actually when you go on court, you actually don't notice. If you don't notice anyone, of course, the only thing you can see is your opponent and the ball. If you actually even notice the referee, then you're not actually. That means that you're actually not focused on the match. So the moment you go on court, you're actually like, you're literally. It doesn't feel anything for me other than I'm looking at the squash ball and my opponent the whole match, and that's what I try to get into. Just focus on those two most important things that I'm trying to chase. And if I look around me with the people, of course, there are moments, obviously, when you play in the Grand Central Station, it's so loud there, for example. But still, if you're really focused, you're not gonna actually notice anything. And I realized that a lot of the matches where I lost, I always feel it. When I watch myself back, I'm like, I see myself noticed everyone who just moved on the side. I would like, before someone served, I would actually stop because someone clapped just a little bit late. But if I'm focused, I would have actually never noticed it. Stuff like that. So you can always see that if you notice these things, then that means that you have lost focus during the match as well. So yeah, once you get into the zone, I think you never really see these things.
What were you saying about someone clapping late? What's your thoughts on maybe letting the crowd make noise and scream and shout during the rallies? Would you be keen on that to make more atmosphere, or do you think that would be too much?
Well, in the rules right now, if something happened during the rally, then we cannot stop the rally. The referee has, if the referee say that that noise affected the rally, then he is the one allowed to stop the rally. If the referee, if the player decides to stop the rally, he loses the point. Actually, do I agree with someone talking during a rally? No, I don't. Is it going to affect me to lose a point during a rally? No, it won't. So I don't think it's gonna affect. I think if someone is gonna win the match because he's the better player, not because someone spoke during a rally. If someone lost and said that I lost that point because someone spoke during a rally, then that's pretty sad for him.
Okay, right. Back to Dylan. I think you got another question.
I haven't got one. This is not to preempt you retiring yet, because we don't want you to retire just yet. But do you have any plans for after you finish playing squash, and will you stay in squash?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the sport. I feel I know a lot in the sport, and there is so much to learn in the sport. I'm a student of the game, and I'm learning every day. And I would definitely like to give something back. I would like to give some of my knowledge. I think I've been through a lot to understand quite a few things. And hopefully one day, maybe I can hopefully try and do something.
Yeah, I mean, like if it turns out to be in a coaching capacity, obviously, for those that don't know, Mo has been coached by Jonah Barrington, one of the all-time greats. Some of you are probably a little bit too young to know of him, but you can obviously Google it. It'd be quite easy to see all the events that he's won over the years. Obviously, Hadrian Stiff down in Bristol, David Palmer, former world #1, world champion, currently with Rodney Martin, who is also world champion as well. Not sure if there was anybody else. Obviously, Gamal in Egypt. So when you've been coached by players with that much knowledge, it rubs off on you, and obviously you can then pass that on yourself. I'm guessing later on when you finish playing.
Hopefully.
Okay. I think I've gone through everyone that's on my list, but if anyone wants to come off mute and has got a question.
Ben, who was the first person you mentioned then, the first coach?
Sorry?
The first coach that you just mentioned, we ought to look him up. We missed the name of that person.
Oh, Jonah.
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 Oh, Jonah, sorry.
Yeah, Jonah Barrington.
I have another question, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
What kind of stuff do you take to a match, like in terms of how many rackets, the kit, and just other stuff that you find useful to have?
I always have around 5 rackets with me. Five. I always have 5 rackets with me. I have a T-shirt. I always like to change my T-shirt after every single game, to be honest. I do believe that sweat makes me, it makes just tiny little bit heavier. And if I can take a little bit of heaviness of me, it helps during the match out. That's how I feel. I think maybe it's more of a mental thing for me. Probably it is. I take my wristbands. I like to wear 2 wristbands and my headbands, obviously my Red Bull headbands. Yeah, and I always take an extra squash shoes with me because a few situations it happened where my squash shoes just went and I had to change my shoes during the match. It actually happened twice. One of them was in a final as well. Yeah, laundry bag definitely. Laundry bag. The days I forget my laundry bag to training is a big day when I get them out of my my squash bag, definitely.
Yes. So when you play events like, I'm just trying to think, like Canary Wharf, where the hotel might not be that close to the court, and there's no changing room facilities. Like, you obviously have to be pretty prepared in what you put in your bag from the hotel to the club.
Luckily, I always book just a place just opposite.
Right.
Yeah, because of that actually, because I like to just. The hotel is if I always have the chance to, I've been always the player, if I have the chance to just be with myself, stay maybe away and have my own place and away from the players, just be with my own team in my own zone. So when I play the match, when I go back to the hotel, I don't want to see the other players, I want to rest mentally, don't want to think about squash. I always, if I have the chance to do that, I always like doing this, and luckily in Canary Wharf I get the chance. So I'm the kind of player that always like to just just be with my own team, just stay away, just see the players only during the competition, just see them when I see them during the match, during the tournament. But with the moment I go off, I just have to be off mentally, and yeah.
Was you like that as a junior, like when you used to play like Egyptian
Definitely.
nationals and stuff?
The thing about it that it was the school that I was taught from, Gamal Awad, Jonah Barrington. They always taught me, you arrive, come to the match, you play the match, you finish, you leave. You need to create a presence about yourself. You can't just you have to. It's part of your job. You're coming to play a match, win a match, and once your job is over, you're not there to hang around to stay for a drink. Your job, either professional athlete, do your job, come back, do your recovery, next day wake up, next day to try and beat your next opponent. And that's the school, the mentality I come from. That's the old school mentality, and that's the mentality that taught me how to play the sport. And that's why in my team I always had someone from the old school, actually. Whether I had Jonah, I had Gamal Awad, I had Palmer, I had Rod, I always had someone from the old school, because they were mentally so strong, and they really understood that better, I think, from the current generation. And that's the way they definitely taught me how to play the sport.
Yeah, because I think like the guys that are on here today obviously play lots of junior tournaments, and what you find is they're running around playing games and with their friends, and then they have to switch off. They're playing games, mucking around, and then they have to go on court and play that same person. It's quite hard to change.
I always found that in my squash career, I could always have friends off squash, but like in the sport, the school that taught me is always respect your opponent, have some level of respect with them, and make them respect you, you respect them. But how can you be friends with someone who wants, when he's watching you, he wants you to lose so he can get over you in the ranking? That's not friendship. Right? So it's never a friendship when you try at the top. It's never a friendship when you're trying to beat that player you're competing with. There is a level of respect, but when you go to school, you can have all your friends, the people you trust, and but at the same time, that's what works for me. That doesn't mean that works for everyone. Some other athletes like to have friends on tour. What makes them, they like to go as teams with them. That what makes them mentally feel comfortable, make them play better. So you always need to see what works for you as an individual, because what works for me doesn't mean that it works for you. So yeah.
Mo, can I ask you a question? I'm involved in teaching, and I really like the book Bounce by Matthew Said. I don't know if you've read Bounce, but is there a book that you recommend that the youngsters read that might help them with their gameplay?
So there are 2 books that I have read that changed my perspective. It's The Alchemist, that changed my perspective on how I want to think about life, and that made me improve in the way I think about my career in the sport. And then what made me improve and think differently in the way I like to win is the book Relentless by he's a fitness trainer who coached Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. He talks about the difference between good and great and unstoppable, and what the difference between the 3 and how the 3 different athletes live their life, and what kind of athletes you want to be like. But in order for me to understand that book, I had to understand to live a certain way of life, where that book Alchemist helped me to live it. So those are 2 books that really inspired me and changed a lot my life, actually.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Who has been your toughest opponent?
My toughest opponent has always been myself. I have competed against so many rivals, but before you think about who you need to beat, there is a lot of things that you need to keep in check first, and if you basically need to beat yourself before you beat your opponent. And if you can't beat yourself, then you will never beat your opponent. So if you're feeling under pressure, if you can deal with the pressure before the match, that means that you let yourself be beaten before you go even on court. So your hardest opponent is always yourself. Talking about my hardest opponent after myself, because I think for every opponent, their hardest opponent are always themselves. And then after that, who is next? That's always been for me. So I always thought the hardest opponent for Ali would be Ali, and then maybe someone else after, So I think my hardest opponent in terms of the players I played against, if I'm going to choose someone who is the hardest on the day, it will definitely be Rami every day. But unfortunately, there is a difference between who is the hardest on the day and who is the hardest to deal with during a whole season. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to compete with Rami for a whole season, because the 2 times we played big matches, he got injured after them. So there was 6-month gap in between them. The time when Rami competed for a whole season, I was too young. So I was not one of the top guys that competed with him at the time. It was more Nick and Greg and Shabana. I was like 19 years old. The time when I was able to compete at that level consistently, Rami used to get injured, unfortunately, which something disappointed me, because I think it would have taken the sport to a lot of heights, because we had so many great matches. So I would say my hardest opponent in terms of a whole season is definitely Ali, because Ali, I would say, the most consistent player I had to play against, because I've seen Ali so many times win a lot of matches when he's not playing his best. It's always, for me, the best player in the world are the best, because they manage to win matches when they're not playing their best. Because it's easy to win matches when you're playing your best, but the amount of times you're going to play your best during the year is probably 5 times. Because I don't mean 5 times, but it will never be every single day, every single match. But it's about always finding ways to win when you're not feeling well, and not finding excuses. And that's what Ali has done very well. And that's why during the season, he has been, one season I get over him, the next season he gets over me. He has been that type of athlete, and that's why we have had a lot of great rivalry the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, I think you're pretty good at winning matches when you're not at your best as well. you manage to always find a way. Okay, any more questions?
What do you do? What do you do, like, in between games, like in your break?
It depends. Sometimes I need to close my eyes and just breathe, and make sure to remember that you need to breathe, because a lot of the time when on court, we actually forget how important breathing is, actually. So you need to take a moment sometimes when I'm in a tough situation, to just take a moment with myself and think, and just focus on breathing and just calm myself. so I can actually find energy to think on what I need to do if I'm in trouble during the match. Sometimes in between games, I want to keep up the intensity, so I keep up looking at my opponent the whole 2 minutes. Sometimes looking at my opponent helps me when I'm tired to actually feel energetic, because sometimes I look at my opponent, see their body language is down, and I'm like a boxer who is like, can't wait to get back on court to even give him a few more punches, you know. So sometimes looking at my opponent actually is what I do as well. So it depends on the situation. It depends on, you just need to adapt all the time.
Are you one of the players that you have to have, not have to, but you prefer to have someone talking to you in between games? Like when I used to work with Peter, he had to have someone in his corner. He hated not having someone to talk to him.
Having the team with you always help. I think back in the day, it didn't really matter much. Having a team with you in every tournament, I don't think was really part of the sport at the time. You know, it wasn't the usual, I would say. I think sport has changed in terms of that. In terms of, you find players having their physios with them, having their own personal physios with them in events now, and having your team with you and all these things is part of the reason why players now can play longer, I think. And I think it's so nice to have your coach with you in a tournament because sometimes you need to hit with not your opponent in the morning, but with the player that you might have to face in the semis, with the opponent you have to face in the final, for example. And it's not like the bad thing, but sometimes you just have to. But if I have my own coach, I'd rather do that every single day as well. So I think nowadays definitely at least do prefer having their own team with them. But having said that, if you don't have your own team, it's not like it's an excuse for you to lose. You still need to find ways to win matches.
I bet that's really scary, Mo, when you stare people out in the break. I'd love to see that. I bet that's really scary.
Well, the thing about it that you create an image about yourself on court in the sport. You want to always you want to be known. I keep asking myself, what do I want to be remembered for? Do I want to be remembered as someone who, when he's too loved down, put his head down and give up, or someone as when he's too loved down, all his opponents will think he's still in the match. He knows, we know he's still gonna fight every single point. So I want to be remembered as this person. So you need to create that image about yourself. Sometimes it's like to have a poker face in the sport, and it's part of my job is to, when I'm feeling weak, to never show that. When I'm feeling that I'm injured, to never show that. I've had so many niggles over my career that no one knows anything about it. I had so many times where I got I puked before matches, and no one, and I never spoke about it in social media, and never will, because it's never an excuse. The moment you go on court, you accept all the consequences that you went on court, and you need to still find ways to win. And I never gave excuses. So that is part of my job. Not part of my job. And then when I go back to Bristol, this is the time of me to be a human being. And that's the people that I expose myself the most. That's why whenever sometimes all athletes get sometimes bad comments, sometimes good comments, it never really affected me that much, because the most important thing for me, the people that really know me are the people that really think of me as a good person, think of me as a good influence and all these things. And these are the people I care about the most, is the people around me, the people that care for me, my team, my parents, my family. But when I go to the squash court, when I go to the tournament, this is the time when it's my poker face to be brutal, to be relentless, to be, if I need to be scary to my opponent, I have to. If I have to be, there are some opponents that I play against that they are scary themselves, like Greg. Whenever I played against him, he made you feel it's a war. He made you feel it's brutal. It's part of who he is as his character. When you get to know Greg and a night out, he's one of the most fun guys ever. Honestly, he's one of the nicest guys ever. So on court, all these guys that you see, they're brutal, they're relentless, but they're so different, of course.
Did that happen recently when you're talking about staring at your opponent? Was there a tournament recently that happened? I remember them commenting on the commentary.
Did
you play Gawad maybe?
I've done it so many times, to be honest.
I've never noticed it.
Maybe the camera never comes at the moment, but I've done it so many times. Definitely.
I'll look out for it next time. Anybody else got a question before we start to wrap it up?
Well, yes, it's fairly a big question, and it's probably beyond your remit, Mo. But what do you think squash needs to do to raise its profile? You are really a superstar in the squash world, but outside of that, not known, and you're one of the fittest men in the world. What does squash need to do?
Well, in terms of sport and what we need to do, what I need to do as an athlete is perform on court. And to represent the sport that the way I can. Everything else, the way that if I play a big match, the way that this match should be marketed, the way that the sport should be taken to another level, there are the guys around that should be doing this job. Our job as squash players is to compete at the highest level and give the sport the best we can and never give less than our 100%. And to represent the sport the way we can in our interviews and our media. The media that comes into the sport, that's part of the job of the people off the court, the people that market the sport, and all of this. Whether we're doing a great job or not, I don't think we're doing the greatest job, and I don't think we're doing the worst job as well. Do I think we can do a better job? Definitely, I do think we can do a lot of things better. Am I the person to advise on what we can do better? Definitely not me, because that's not what I was made for. I can always throw opinions here and there, but it would be without experience. So I never try to get included in politics like this. But all I can say that whenever the sport have asked me to be there, to be ambassador for something, to do something or stuff, I was never late for it. Whether it was the right thing to put me through, that was not my call. So that's really all I can say about it.
I mean, in terms of being an ambassador, I mean, I think there's no one better than yourself. I mean, the fact that you've given up your time on a Sunday night to chat to these guys for an hour, over an hour now. I mean, that's the equivalent of Cristiano Ronaldo from football doing the same, or Roger Federer or whatever. I don't hope everyone that's on here tonight realizes how lucky you guys are to have this insight into this. So thank you again, Mo. Right, same again. Before I wrap it up, maybe just do 2 more questions if we've got any.
Yes, I have a question. Training day like when you were a junior?
Sorry?
What was your training day like when you were a junior?
I did a lot of solo practices. Solo practices were a big part of my training. I would go solos for at least 4 hours a day, every day, actually. And I, as much as a lot of juniors hate solo practices the most.
I actually missed that, Mo. How long did you say?
4 hours.
4 hours solo.
So as much as I know that a lot of juniors hate that the most, that was one of the things that Gamal Awad made me do in my training every day, actually, when I was young, is make me do repetitions. So because repetitions are boring. And that's what he told me, that's the training that we're going to make you strong mentally for the rest of your life. It was that kind of training to make me do repetition. It was every summer training, every year for the 4 years I trained with him, from when I was 9 till 13. He made me do for a whole month in the summer, every day, 4 hours solos, just for 1 month, just during the healing. It was a month of preparing me mentally for the season. And as much as I hated it, but it was so important and so brutal. But it made me, after that, actually really enjoy solo practices, because it was the moment that I find that it was the only moment when I can actually go on court and no coach can tell me what to do. There was no Ben Ford who can tell me what to do, There was no Hadrian who can tell me what to do, like there was no coach who can tell me what to do. I can actually invent things myself. I can think for myself. So when I go on court, I have actually learned when I go for solos to actually think. It's not a good thing sometimes to just get told what to do all the time, So it's good sometimes to go on court and just to invent, even if you hit stupid shots. It's how do the Egyptians hit amazing shots? Because we are used to go on court soloing, hitting stupid shots. And then those stupid shots become actually great shots, Actually, that's what happens. And so yeah, I think solo practices are very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's similar to what I say to the guys that I coach. When they've got to do solo practice, they all hate it, but it's exactly what you say, Mo. You have to experiment. You have to try different things, because what I'm telling, or what whoever your coach is, what they're telling you might not always feel perfect, but you might be able to find a different way that works better, and you go back to your coach and say, "I tried this; it worked really well." Yeah, so everyone out there, get on there, do some solos, and as soon as the courts are open.
I know everyone must hate me now. I think every junior is gonna must hate me now.
Right, okay, we'll have one more question and then we're going to wrap it up.
Tomorrow's a new day. We're all going to start a new day tomorrow. No, what would be your top tip for us all? What should the kids focus on now?
Ask yourself, who do you want to be? Ask yourself, how do you want to be remembered from playing squash? What character do you want to be remembered? And I think when you answer that question, you can then when you answer that question, it will be easy for you to plan toward that goal. Because I found a lot of people get lost because they don't have a specific goal, because they don't know what they want to do, who they want to be. So I think it's very important to understand how do you want to be, who do you want to be. When I was young, I wanted to be world number one. That's what I wanted to be. So any sacrifice that came with this, it was never hard. I actually enjoyed the sacrifices because that's what I wanted to be. So that's the question, I think.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it with Josh, or maybe with Gina, I can't remember. All the guys that are on here tonight are going to have different aspirations. Not everyone is going to be thinking, I want to be world number one. Some are going to be, I want to make it into the Kent team. I want to be better than the guy who's above me in the team, or something like that. But as long as you set yourself a target and you feel like you're putting 100% into it, then you're going to get rewarded eventually. And yeah, Mo had his sights set on world number one, and he managed to do that. And he's going to be there for a lot longer, I think, because of that mindset.
Hopefully.
Right. Okay, guys, we'll wrap it up there. Mo, from everyone that's on here, and obviously from me, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. I'm sure you've inspired all the kids. They'll be supporting you for the next tournament, so you'll have a few more supporters for next time you're on Squash TV. Yeah, and so take care, and we look forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Mo.
you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot for having me. Thank you.